I think it's all about like the relationships that you make along the way. If you can get in there and get boots on the ground and make yourself irreplaceable and invaluable, you get a foothold in the industry and you can build on that then, but you have to work for it.
Welcome to the first episode of Money and Horses. This is an interview series where I ask horse industry professionals what it really means to make horses your job. Like, how do you get there? How do you make money? How does it actually work in real life? These are questions I've had for a very long time, and I'm finally getting out there and answering them, and hopefully it interests you as well. If you have any suggestions for job titles, specific people that you would like me to interview, definitely let me know in the comments. And if this type of thing is just generally interesting to you, be sure to subscribe to this channel because there's going to be more coming. Now we're gonna get rolling with our very first interview, which is Ashley Donatt. She's a San Diego-based dressage rider, and we're gonna get to the bottom with her on how you actually make a living being a dressage trainer here in Southern California. So let's get cracking on it. All right, Ashley, well, thank you for being here and doing this with us.
Of course.
I've wanted to do something like this for a very long time, and you're gracious enough to be that person to take the dive. So just to get started, why don't you get us caught up to speed on like how you got into horses and when that was?
Okay, yeah, so I started riding when I was in second grade, and apparently I was just obsessed with horses when I stopped talking about them, so it was my teacher who told my mom that she really should do something about that, and so luckily my mom took me to horse camp that summer, and then the rest was pretty much history.
Along the lines, I guess I should ask, what type of riding were you doing as you came up? From second grade up to maybe like a young teenager? Was it always dressage or was it something else?
I did start with dressage pretty early, but when I first started riding, it was Western. Like when I was 9 or 10, I had found a dressage trainer and pretty much switched to like a full dressage focus at that point.
That's cool. So what point along that line, like how old were you, where were you in your life when you were like, I'm gonna make horses my job, not just my passion?
Pretty sure like when I was 9, I knew that it was just what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, which I know it was just pretty cool that I'm actually doing it, because I know a lot of time when people or when kids have an idea of what they want to be when they grow up, it doesn't always work out, but I'm actually, from a very young age, like I knew that this is what I wanted to do.
I mean, there'd be a lot more astronauts if that was really the case, you know what I mean? It's like to stick with it. I'm trying to think when I was 9, I probably wanted to be like an Army commando or something.
Yeah.
That didn't work out. So you're 9 years old and you're like, I'm riding horses for the rest of my life.
Yep.
Now, how long did it take from when you were 9 until you made your first actual money as a horse professional? And I don't mean like, you know, your friend paid you $5 to shovel the stalls or whatever, but like as a professional, where did you make your first dollar?
So I don't know, this might be a little bit like what you're saying, but when I was 16, I did start working for my trainer, like doing some lessons and riding horses to get paid in the barn, but I don't know if you'd call that like professional at that point.
So that's pretty close.
Yeah.
But maybe give me your next one.
Yeah, and so then like training or like working, because I worked for a groom and got paid professionally as a groom for...
I think that counts.
Yeah, so I started getting paid professionally as a groom when I was 18.
Right on.
Yeah.
And was there a clear path to like, I am a groom and then I step up to, you know, competitive rider, trainer, whatever that goal was? Like, did you see that at that age, or were you kind of just like, I will do anything to be around horses?
I would do anything to be around horses, yeah. So from 9 years old on, it was really whatever I could do to be around horses, I was going to be doing it. And part of it was that was how I could afford to have horses too, or to have lessons, was cleaning stalls in exchange for my training and helping out with feeding and turnout and that kind of thing at the barn that I grew up at. So working around horses was always a way for me to have horses. So it kind of just came together, and that was all I knew. So I was happy doing that. As long as I was working with horses in some capacity, I was happy with that.
That's cool. Did you ever, I mean, it's so hard to say this for like when you're 18, right? But did you ever have a vision for the future on what your life with horses was going to look like 5-10 years down the road?
No, actually I didn't. But thankfully I had other people looking out for me that I think did. Nice. And they kind of believed in me and more than I did. And I think they saw bigger things for me than I even knew was a possibility. So no, at 18, I didn't think I want to be doing this or that. Like I didn't have any kind of vision on I was just happy to be working with horses, and that was really all I knew. I didn't have like major aspirations in a sense to be really competitive, or I was just really wanted to be working with horses was
That's cool.
all I knew.
No, and I'm glad you brought up that you didn't have aspirations to be competitive, because I have a question about that in a second. But you basically mentioned a mentor, more or less, maybe an informal mentor. Who was that?
So I've had many really amazing mentors. Where do I begin? I don't.
Well, how about who like saw something in your either your attitude or your skill set or whatever when you were 18 that was like, no, maybe do this instead of just like be a groom forever?
Yeah. So it was who I was working for at the time. Her name's Siggy Wolf, another dressage trainer up in Washington State, where I'm from. And it was actually when I was 20, I just turned 22. I was still working for her as a groom, assistant, rider, kind of manager position in her barn at the time. And she was the one who was like, hey, there's this really cool opportunity down in California. Still a grooming position, but I think she knew where it could lead to too, and what a great opportunity it would be for me to be down here and around this caliber of riders and other trainers. So that really that came from her, and that kick-started everything.
It's cool.
Where I'm at now.
And as a little small world side note, I met Siggy Wolf a million years ago. I used to sell horseback riding I used to sell saddles back in the day, and I came across Siggy. I went to her very nice barn at like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So I barely know her, but like I have met her. So just you were probably
crazy.
Still living in Washington State at that time, actually.
I moved down here 12 years ago. I moved down here in 2012.
Okay, no, then you were already here.
Yeah.
This would have been like 2014.
That would have been really crazy.
Yeah. I know, small world.
Yeah.
So you brought something up that you didn't actually have huge competition aspirations, right?
Yeah.
But like I think a lot of riders, they want to be at, in Grand Prix tests. They want to be at the highest level. They want the fancy horses, the Grand Prix ride, all that stuff, right? And just in general, how do you view like the importance of being a very high level rider versus being a successful trainer? Because it seems to me, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that like most trainers actually pay the bills from either riding horses, at their barn, or teaching lessons and stuff.
Yeah.
But the glamour comes in like showing up at the Grand Prix test and riding with all those people that you see, online and stuff. So how do you juggle the importance of like being a successful competitive rider versus like actually having a successful training business?
Yeah. So I definitely value, you should be a horseman first, and like really, I think that being a good trainer and being a good horse person and being like working with other people, is priority for me. And I think that if you do all of that, that is what pays the bills too. Right. And so if you do all of that well, then the other stuff kind of comes secondary after that. But it can be hard to, make a living. That's what you have to do from the training and the lessons and everything. And then, but to have like the other goals of mine too, to be now a more of a top competitive rider, it can kind of pull you in two different directions. So you just try and balance that as well as you can. And I have to. It's the way it works.
Totally. I'd imagine. By the way, I don't know a lot about the ins and outs of how to be a successful dressage trainer. So don't let me put words in your mouth. But it seems like you need to be at a certain level just so your clientele is like, she's an expert.
Yeah.
But then, where do you draw that line? Like, do you feel that when you're I'm going to actually probably just jump ahead to another question.
Okay.
So, as far as how you attract clients to your training business, does a significant amount of that have to do with you being at the shows, you having results and fancy horses at the shows, or is it kind of unrelated? How does that?
It does.
Yeah.
I think there's different stages of it. Like I can get into how I first started my business and like how how it's
definitely go to that.
Changed
that's
over.
where you should go. Yeah.
So I think because like one of your questions was, I'm trying to figure out how to word this to kind of go along with everything.
Well, don't worry about answering my question specifically.
Yeah.
But one of the questions I had was, how did you get your first 5 clients?
Yeah.
Or your first 3, or your first 10, like whatever. Just sort of casual, like how you kind of started it, really.
Yeah, it's really, I think, word of mouth. So I having worked for so many other trainers as a groom and assistant rider and manager of barns, you kind of get an idea. Like, that was really how I learned how the industry works and how to create a business model off of that, and training and teaching and competing. And so eventually, I've kind of felt like I had gained enough knowledge or expertise, maybe at a lower level, but enough that I felt like I had something to offer clients in the area. And so I did branch out on my own then and wanted to kind of start my own, make my name a little bit more on my own. And so that, but I was, didn't have like all the accolades or I wasn't competing a lot at the time. Like, I didn't have a lot to my name that way, but I felt like I had enough to help, amateur riders and young riders and everyone starting out with dressage. So from there, it was a lot of word of mouth from, of course, the trainers I had worked for before. If they have people reach out to them that are looking for training, but maybe they were full at the time, then they'd kind of send them my way. So it was a great, I think it's all about like the relationships that you make along the way, and keeping a good reputation, and then you get word of mouth that way. And kind of like I had the mentality, because even I wasn't trying to call myself like this big fancy trainer or like a high, really high level or anything, but you do have to start somewhere. Everyone has to start somewhere, and I kind of had the mentality like, build it and they will come. And so once I kind of put it out there, then you just slowly start getting clients, and then through that, like I'm always learning and trying to push myself further along the way too, that I don't get comfortable at one level. I really want to keep expanding my knowledge and experience, which you gain experience as you're training and working with other people too. So having my own business was a way for me to kind of build my experience too, rather than waiting until I felt like I had all this experience and had all this knowledge. Kind of just get started and keep learning as you go, and luckily people are supportive of that.
I think you nailed a bunch of stuff there, because it's like, I've done a lot of research on just building traditional businesses, right?
Yeah.
And like the idea of not waiting to get started and not waiting until like everything is perfect to start, because that's like, the paralysis that stops you from starting. So that was like so key. But it seems like essentially network was a big piece of this, right? Like you went and you got to meet, I know at the very least you worked with Siggy, and you worked with Gunther Seidel as well, right? And others. So either way, getting like these bigger names that like, already sort of have their like following, if you will, to kind of like guide you along seems pretty smart.
Right. And that, of course, you get a ton of experience and knowledge and learning from all of them. And so I definitely recommend to anyone who's wanting to become a trainer, have their own training business, like learn as much as you can and really work alongside and work with other trainers. And not just in a student capacity. I think I learned more by being a groom for these riders than I would have if I was only a student and lessons with them.
When you say you learn more being a groom, is that because you were just around more? What was it about being a groom that helped you learn more?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of training horses, and people are maybe different, but training horses is really about the horsemanship too on the ground, and not only what's happening in the saddle. And so I just gained a whole nother perspective and appreciation for working with the horses day in and day out of the saddle, that kind of made me realize like how the training in the arena should be or not be, based on the care of the horses in the barn too.
That's cool. That makes sense. I mean, because you think, I guess that just makes
it's
sense.
It's not
right?
only just training and going out to the horse shows and like competing and doing well. Like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and that was what I think gave me more understanding of what being a trainer really means.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. Like as far as, so kind of speaking still more about this training business thing, right? Like, is there a certain size of business that is ideal, either maybe just ideal for you, right? Like a certain number of lessons taught per week, a certain number of horses in training or in full training, like
Yeah.
where do you find that equilibrium? Like you need to get at least X to even survive, but then at this point you start getting overwhelmed and you need to bring on like additional assistant trainers and stuff. Where's that
Right.
sweet spot?
For me, because I try to stay more towards kind of like a boutique kind of feel, and particularly with dressage, it's all so one-on-one and individual that really you can only fit so many horses or rides in a day that way and still keep it individualized. So I think having like right around 10 full training clients is a kind of a sweet number to
Nice.
keep
Does that
it
mean
at.
10 horses?
10 horses, yeah.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah.
So what if I called you and I said, I just got this new horse. Can you fit me in? Like,
Yeah.
what does that look like? Like
Yeah.
for me, are you going to
Yeah.
shut me down? Or are you going to pass me off to somebody in the barn? Can you squeeze more in? Like how do you view that?
Yeah, there's always like a little ebb and flow, and so I definitely like we have 12 in the barn right now. So yeah,
Right
I do
on.
squeeze
Yeah.
some in, but I never take on more than I feel like I can still do a good job of. I don't want to sacrifice the quality of what I'm doing for anyone or horses. So I would turn you away if I really felt like it was out of my capacity to be able to do a good job.
Totally.
Still, and then I refer you to other people I know in the community too.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, it seems like integrity is a huge part of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you lose that, like, you're probably going to lose all 12 of those clients
Yeah.
that were here anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I like that.
Yeah,
like,
definitely for me. I mean, I really try and stand by that and what I value. And yeah.
That's super cool. Changing gears a little bit, how important is social media in what you do?
Yeah, so social media is interesting. I think it actually is very important nowadays. It's
Yeah.
getting more and more popular, not popular, but valuable, I think, for businesses and riders and trainers in particular. And so for me, I don't necessarily get clients through social media, but it's just kind of a platform to kind of create your own brand in a way, and that people can get to know you a little bit more of like what you represent or what you offer, and kind of get to know you as a person. And so that if I do, once I kind of get a client in the barn, it just becomes like a way for us to connect more. And yeah.
That's cool. I wanted to mention on your social media, because like before we ever met, I found you through social media.
Yeah,
I found you through Instagram,
yeah.
right? And it's like I got this feeling like I knew who you and Evan were before
Yeah.
I ever even met you, because you guys do a good job of like sharing your sort of brand,
Yeah.
with the world, right? And it's
Yeah.
like this real warm and kind of like kindness oriented thing. But
Yeah.
I would have to guess that like maybe it doesn't get you clients, but it shows your clients and your prospective clients who you
Yeah.
are, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I resonate with that, versus maybe somebody who's just extremely focused on competition, much more
Yeah.
serious, and you seem like you have like
Yeah.
a little bit more of a playful vibe
Yep.
in your barn than maybe some other ones. or
Yeah,
something.
we definitely, I'm glad that is what comes through, because we definitely strive to create that and
Totally.
have that kind of vibe.
Totally. No, I think that's personality is key.
One more comment with that too, like, I don't necessarily get, I get sponsors or new contacts or sales, or if I have a sales force, like that can be a good way to network and get the word out too. But I don't necessarily get new clients from social media, but I know, for me at least, like if I have a new client that reaches out to me, like I'm always trying to find people online and like get to know a little bit about them before necessarily, like I always follow up, but
Yeah.
I definitely, that's kind of the perk of having social media.
Oh,
Now
yeah.
you can get to know people before you even meet them and like kind
Yeah.
of background check. And so I would hope that prospective clients of mine would be doing the same thing, like
Totally.
looking me up, and that again, it's just kind of having like a online business card to kind of
Yeah.
represent.
It's good.
who
Yeah,
you are.
it's a two-way street. You can check
Yeah,
on them.
yeah.
Obviously, you don't want like a difficult,
Yeah.
client
I hope
doesn't
that
like,
didn't come
resonate
across
with
the
you.
wrong way that
No,
I'm like
but I think
stalking
you just-
people, but you can
I
get
mean-
a sense of who people are.
Yeah,
think.
I mean, everyone knows that whatever they put out there is for public consumption.
Yeah,
So hopefully they're happy with what their people are saying. I
Right,
wouldn't call it
right.
stalking. I just feel like calling it like, who are you?
Yeah, and I think then you kind of know who you're getting involved with, and if you align on the same level and values and
Totally.
goals and everything. So
Totally. So how many days a week are you at the barn?
I try 6 days a week maybe.
6?
I try to take a day off. Yeah, 5 to 7.
5 to 7.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're running out of days of the week. You can't go beyond 7.
Yeah.
Could you be a successful trainer and not work weekends?
Yeah.
You think so? Like, would your clientele take that?
I think, my
Accept it,
clients are always encouraging me to like get away from the barn and take more time off. So I think yes, you can. I think personally, I just like to be really involved in the horses' lives and the care of everything. And I really enjoy doing it, so it doesn't always feel like work coming here.
Yeah.
And so I just like to be involved. But I think, yes, you could be a good, successful horse trainer.
That's cool.
Definitely.
Good to know. 'Cause it seems like every trainer that I've ever met, either Monday or Tuesday is their weekend, you know?
Yeah.
So I was just curious.
Yeah.
That's good, though.
Yeah.
So maybe tied to that, what's the most annoying part about being a dressage trainer?
Probably, like in general, I think the things that don't actually have anything to do with training, like communications, emails, texts, phone calls, anything that doesn't really have to do with the horse can be annoying. Like, because I want to train, I want to ride, I want to be working, teaching, and so like the back end, like the paperwork, like the office type work.
Well, I mean, I think it could be really easy to see all the sparkles of like, I love horses, I want to be with horses, I want to ride, I have all these ambitions, and but then you're like, oh, at the end of the day, this is like still a business. I still have expenses, I still have to pay my groom, I still have to do all this stuff, which like, I don't care what you're selling or providing, like that's still annoying, or at least a hassle at the very least, you know.
And with that in mind, like I think it's a very important part of a good business, though too. So even though I don't enjoy it, like I think you really need to put a lot of effort and focus into that too, because it's part of my business, and having good communication, and I think it's really important with clients.
Totally. I think in the modern day, communication, whether you want to call it customer service or just communication, like that's so key. Because like, man, if you email a company or, a horse training company or whatever, and they don't get back to you or they suck at communicating, that is so frustrating.
Right.
So, a necessary annoyance. For sure.
And with that in mind, like that was part of how I started my business too, knowing even though I wasn't like necessarily a really high level trainer yet, I felt like I had good communication, like I had a good customer service. So that is really a lot of what you're selling to, or what you're helping people with, is not only the training, but just providing them like a safe place to enjoy and their horse and know that they're well taken care of. And so that was a big part of what I offered in the beginning.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm older than you, but like, I think we came up in an era of like communication and customer service becoming so critical, where like, maybe 20 years ago, pre-internet, that was a very different perspective on that. But it seems nowadays that's so important. I don't think that's communicating with your customer, whoever that is, that can't be overstated on how important it is, at least in my opinion.
I agree.
Okay, either as a rider or as a owner of a business, what's the lowest low you've hit along the way?
I think as a rider, or just being a part of the horse business, for me, I think I've lost a lot of really great horses that have passed away, and that is hard, and that's just a reality, I think, of being in the horse business, or even selling horses. I get so attached to all of them, like letting them go can be really hard. So those are probably the biggest lows, is anytime I've had to say goodbye to a really special horse, which for me, I've been fortunate enough to have had many really special horses that I've unfortunately had to say goodbye to. So that's really hard.
That is very hard. Now I have to imagine that only amplifies it being in the industry, right? Because your average rider might have one horse at any given time, right? If you're working with and have this connection with 10 horses, I mean, that just has to 10x that part of it, which is I guess the downside of it. Makes sense though. Now, I wanted to ask about sponsorships, right? I think a lot of people would be interested to know how sponsorships in this industry work. And as far as I know, it doesn't seem, and please correct me if I'm wrong, for most trainers, many trainers have sponsorships, right?
Yeah.
But it seems to me like there isn't a huge financial compensation
Right.
tied to that. So I'm just curious how you view sponsorships, how they help you, like where do they tie into the business?
I think it's not as much of a monetary
Mm-hmm.
gain having a sponsorship for sure. I mean, it does help a lot. Most sponsors I have are like you get free product or a
Yeah.
certain amount of free product, which is definitely really helpful. But in the big picture, like I'm not making money off of having these. Like they don't pay for big, grand, glamorous things really.
Totally.
So it's not that kind of benefit. But the benefit for me, I think there is like a certain amount of credibility behind having a sponsor, and I think for me it also kind of adds to my brand or like what I represent, and so people see what feed you're using or what products you're using, and can kind of get an idea of like what I'm about or what I kind of stand by. And so with that in mind too, I've always been really selective on what sponsor deals I will take. Usually it's something I'm already using in the barn, and I won't agree to a sponsorship just for the sake of having it if I don't really believe in the product or what they value too.
That's cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I never really thought of it that way. It's kind of like if you wear a brand of a shirt or something, you're like, hey, I wear a Nike shirt, so I'm sporty and all this.
Yeah.
But like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like you want to be aligned so people know a little bit about who you are via the brands that you're
it's
backed by.
like more of a part of the team kind of
Yeah.
aspect of it. So
That's cool. How much do you think your social media presence ties into your like marketability toward brands? Like, do you think that if you were like, I don't play Instagram, I don't want to mess around with that, I just want to focus on my horses, do you think that would affect the sponsorship side of things?
I do.
Yeah.
I think because I mean, then they don't know who you are.
Totally.
Like, where are you?
Totally.
So I do think that having a good social media presence, and that doesn't mean like a high number of followers or anything, but I think you need some kind of image and some kind of message that you're putting out there. Not trying to sell anything, but just being yourself and creating that brand. I think that's what people want to follow and engage with, and that is also what the sponsors want to align with then as well. So I think it would be really hard for someone like so I think it would be hard to find sponsors without a good social media presence, unless you have all the accolades and all the championship titles and things like that behind your name, which I don't yet.
Right.
But the social media has been another great avenue, and I think more of a normal thing now kind of for people to find sponsorships that way.
Yeah.
Before becoming like a big Olympic rider or something.
That makes a ton of sense, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. From the perspective of a brand, it's like that's most of what the value that we get as a brand is like somebody that has some amount of reach. And it, like you said, it doesn't have to be a huge following. It can either be a really like dedicated following, a following of people that really love you, or it could be somebody that looks the part that aligns with the brand. So that alignment, I feel, goes both ways, where like you want brands that align with what you're about, but brands also want to be like, hey, we sponsor, Ashley or something, and this is what we're about. So it kind of is this two-way street. So I think that it's symbiotic, but it really helps to have that social media following. And, and I even asked that because it comes up, like we get a lot of sponsorship requests.
Yeah.
And if there's nothing there on social, you're like, we don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Like, let alone, want to talk about sponsorships or anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know, because it's all exposure, right? Either you have the exposure on your social media presence or exposure from attending major competitions where you're going to have a lot of eyes on you and media, other media outlets there anyway.
So as we're wrapping up here, I kind of want to just ask your advice for anybody who wants to turn horses from just their passion into their job. And that could be an 18-year-old, just like you were, that just loved horses. Or this could be someone in like maybe a 30-year-old or 35-year-old who's had a career but is like tired of the rat race and wants to be involved in horses professionally. Like what would you recommend to somebody at any age to get to sort of start down that path?
Yeah, I think you really just have to go for it and work hard. I know it all sounds cliche, but you have to put the work in. And I think that then, work with as many trainers or as many, get into barns, really learning from other trainers, I think is the best way to get started in building your own business.
Would you recommend somebody work for free just to get basically boots on the ground experience?
Yeah.
Or would you take a different approach?
I think boots on the ground, do whatever you have to, go for it, I think is a good way to go. That really, I know it sounds bad to work for free, and of course you need to make a living and make money, but I think you just have to show up first and show that you really care and that you want to be there, and hopefully the trainers are going to, respond to that and reward you from that. But I think you got to get in however you can, and even if that means just working for free, being a working student, do it. Definitely don't let yourself get taken advantage of. If you're not gaining anything or learning anything from it, then get out of there. Or if you're getting emotionally abused or get out. But if it's a really good, reputable trainer who you really admire, just everyone needs help. So they'll be eager to have you in there, I'm sure. If you're if you're willing to work for free, and get started, and then prove yourself, and work your way up, and eventually you get paid more and more. And I think, and that was how I did it. And I think, if you can get in there and get boots on the ground and make yourself irreplaceable and invaluable, then you get a foothold in the industry, and you can build on that then. But you have to work for it. And
makes sense. Yeah, if I'm just going to take what you've already told me and turn it back and say it to you, it sounds like you basically made a bunch of network little connections. You met a bunch of prominent people. You obviously left a good impression with them.
Yeah.
And then they started referring you out clients as they couldn't take them. So it's want to meet people.
Yeah.
And be a decent person. So
exactly.
everybody likes you. It's a very small world.
Yeah.
And one bridge burn could mean a lot.
Yeah.
Bridges burn. So
definitely.
just being trustworthy and honest and showing up and being liked.
Yeah. More or less. I know. It sounds kind of just assumed, but I think being you really can't undervalue being a good person and being pleasant to be around, and especially, and that's also what I try to keep in my own business as well, because the horse industry is really hard, and you can get burned out, and people get bitter and grumpy, and there's a lot of, you lose a really good horse, or they go lame or get injured, it can be really depressing.
Sure.
But try not to let that dampen who you are as a person, and so still I think all the negatives or the difficulties of the horse world can really bring out the worst in people, but try and have it, not be that bad, or not let that take away from being a good person still.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, good advice. Well, thank you, and that's what we'll end on. So thank you for the time. So if you want to follow Ashley, you can check her out, Donadt Dressage, on Instagram. I've linked that below. If you like this conversation, definitely subscribe to this channel. We'll have more coming, and we're definitely taking requests as well. So if you have a profession, a person, anything that you would be interested in hearing about, leave that in the comments. And other than that, thank you for watching, and we'll talk soon.